Singapore today, a gleaming city of glass, steel, and order, stands among the richest nations on Earth. Yet only 6 decades ago, it was a humid, chaotic swamp, a small island with no natural resources, no army, and no reason to believe it could survive. And yet one man defied history, a man both loved and feared, a leader called the Father of Singapore. But behind that title lays another one, the successful dictator. This is the story of how Lee Kuan Yew, a man who ruled with an iron fist and a vision sharper than any weapon, transformed a struggling colony into one of the most advanced societies in human history. A story of ambition, control, and the brutal cost of building paradise. When the British withdrew in the early 1960s, Singapore was abandoned like a child in the rain. Its streets overflowed with unemployment, ethnic tension, and crime. For a brief moment, it joined Malaysia, until being expelled in 1965. Lee stood before the cameras, tears in his eyes, saying, "For me, it is a moment of anguish."
Singapore from Malaysia, it will be a moment of anguish. For me, it is a moment of anguish because all my life,
But that painful day became the beginning of something extraordinary. A nation smaller than New York City was forced to stand alone, and Lee Kuan Yew knew that if Singapore failed, it would vanish forever. In those early days, the odds were impossible. Hostile neighbors, no natural water supply, no resources, and no confidence from the world. But where others saw despair, Lee saw a blank canvas. His determination became Singapore's fuel. He was no general and no aristocrat, just a Cambridge-educated lawyer who believed discipline could create prosperity. Democracy, he said, was a luxury poor nations couldn't afford. "I'm not interested in being loved," he once declared. "I'm interested in being respected." His vision was simple but radical. Clean streets, honest government, education for all, and zero tolerance for corruption. Popularity didn't matter, results did. Lee's speeches were sharp, his commands absolute, but they ignited belief in a nation that had almost given up hope. When he took power, bribery poisoned every corner of government. Lee created the Corrupt Practices Investigation Bureau with power to arrest anyone, even ministers. "If you want to fight corruption," he warned, "be prepared to send your friends to jail." And he did. Within years, Singapore became one of the cleanest governments in the world. Officials were paid well to remove temptation. Honesty became survival. Lee didn't preach morality, he enforced it. He understood that trust was the real currency of progress, and once a government lost it, no amount of money could buy it back. Lee didn't just govern, he engineered a society. Through the Housing and Development Board, he gave citizens affordable modern homes. By the 1980s, more than 80% of Singaporeans owned their flats. He built English language schools, efficient bureaucracy, and strict urban laws. Chewing gum, littering, spitting, all banned. Western critics called it authoritarian. Lee called it discipline. "If you want investors," he said, "your streets must look like your economy, clean and efficient." Every building, every policy, every regulation reflected his belief that discipline was not oppression, but order in service of progress. Order came at a price. The press was controlled, opposition silenced, critics sued into bankruptcy. "We decide what is right," Lee once said. "Never mind what the people think." Freedom of speech, he argued, was dangerous in a fragile, multi-ethnic nation. Yet even those who feared him admitted that under his rule, Singapore thrived. In 3 decades, its GDP per capita jumped from $500 to over $55,000. To Lee, freedom was meaningless without survival. He built first and then allowed expression later, a reversal of the Western models that stunned the world. By the 1970s, Lee had become the architect of Singapore's identity, guardian to some, dictator to others. To prevent chaos, he built a political machine where opposition existed but could never truly win. Detention without trial silenced rebels. Defamation suits drained challengers. "You can't run a country without tough laws," he said. "Weak governments breed weak nations." And though harsh, it worked. Even rivals grudgingly admitted his methods delivered stability no one else could match. Singapore was a fragile mosaic of Chinese, Malays, and Indians. Lee feared one riot could destroy the nation, so he enforced racial integration through housing and education, making English the neutral common language. "I am creating Singaporeans," he said, "not Chinese, not Malays, not Indians." Critics accused him of erasing culture. He was building unity. The result was one of the most cohesive societies on earth, a place where merit mattered more than race or religion. But that unity came with fear. Journalists watched what they wrote, activists vanished from headlines, and morality was regulated by law. Foreign media mocked Singapore as a nanny state, but citizens accepted it because life worked. Streets were safe, jobs stable, corruption nearly extinct. "Yes, I interfere in private lives," Lee said. "If I didn't, we wouldn't be here today." For him, efficiency was freedom. Chaos was death. He built not just a nation, but a mindset. By the 1980s, Singapore was an economic miracle. Skyscrapers rose where slums once stood. Multinationals flooded in, trusting the nation's stability. Lee's model, clean government, strict order, and global openness, became the envy of the world. A third-world port had become a first-world metropolis in one generation. He had turned discipline into wealth and fear into progress. Singapore became proof that development could be engineered like a machine. In 1990, after 31 years, Lee stepped down as prime minister, but he never truly left power. As senior minister and later minister mentor, he guided his successors, including his son, Lee Hsien Loong. Critics called it dynasty. Supporters called it continuity. His influence was embedded in every institution, from schools to courts to the very psychology of the nation. Even decades after stepping down, his voice echoed in Singapore's policies, the invisible architect behind the nation's stability. On March 23, 2015, Lee Kuan Yew died at 91. Singapore fell silent. Crowds lined the streets under heavy rain. Millions watched in tears. For a week, the island mourned the man who had ruled them and built them. Even his fiercest critics admitted he had changed history. He was called visionary, tyrant, dictator, and savior. And perhaps he was all of them. Because he proved something the modern world still struggles to accept, that freedom alone does not build nations. That order, discipline, and vision, even when imposed by one man, can turn a swamp into a city that inspires the world. Lee Kuan Yew didn't just build Singapore. He built a new idea, that sometimes the line between democracy and dictatorship is exactly where greatness begins.